and children learn many of their adult money behaviors by the age of 7. And so when I heard that, I was like, what? Really? I can't remember even thinking about money at the age of 7. But then you kind of think about it. When kids are just absorbing so much when they're growing up, and especially at that very young age. So if they're not even being spoke to about money, but they're seeing money being dealt around the house. So if they just see money's for spending, money's for spending, money's for spending, that just gets hardwired into their developing brains. And then as they get older, you've then got to try and rewire that brain to say, no, money's not just for spending. There's other things for it.
Welcome to the Wealth with Love podcast. Myself, I'm Tando, and this is Lindy. We're both from Skilled Finances, but we are super passionate about showcasing the positive side of building your wealth and your love together in your relationship as a couple. And in one of those areas is how you handle money and your children. And today we have a very special guest who is an expert in this topic, and we can't wait to dive deeper into this conversation. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm doing very, very well. I'm excited to be speaking with you both.
100%. So are we. So before we jump into all the topics that we're going to talk about today, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what do you do?
Sure. So I started my career as working for a big consultancy firm. So I'm an actuary in training, or so a qualified actuary. For those who don't know what an actuary is, I forgive you. Not many people do, but essentially it's an accountant who loves statistics and does sort of financial risk and assessments. So I was doing that for some large corporations in the UK. And then in 2014, I got an offer to go and work with my company in Hong Kong and kind of take over doing head of investment strategy for Asia. So we did that. I had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. So we moved to Hong Kong, traveling around Asia, sort of working with large institutional clients, telling them where they should invest their money. And then it was around 2017, I was having a conversation with someone about my two daughters then. And they said, oh, enjoy this time with them. They only grow up once. And it was a very simple statement, but had a really kind of profound kind of impact on me. And I was like, I want to spend more time with my kids. And so I said to my wife, we should just take some time off work. And at the time, I was reading the book, The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, about how to sort of make the most of your time. And so in 2019, we did that. I left my full-time job. My wife left her job, and we moved from Hong Kong to Vietnam, a beautiful place called Hoi An in the middle of in Vietnam, like amazing place. And it was at that time we just realized just how lucky we were to have this kind of opportunity to be able to take time off corporate work, spend time with our young kids. And it turns out that not many people were in the same position, because my wife and I just were savers, and because my background, we invested our money. So we had this income from the money that we've been kind of saving that kind of allowed us to have this opportunity and cover our expenses and have this time with our kids. And so whilst my kids are at international school, I wanted to be doing something, and I thought, right, I want to teach my kids about money so that they can have this same kind of opportunity when they're older, and maybe don't want to take it. They may want to do something different, but at least have that option. And so I tried coming up with ideas and stories and teaching them about money, and then realized that there's not that many resources out there for parents. And hence I started my sort of company, which is Blue Tree Savings, to help parents teach their kids about money, and kind of sharing the kind of journey that I went on through to teach my kids about money.
Oh,
So that's
beautiful,
nice.
beautiful journey, beautiful story, and there's so much to unpack within that. Just out of curiosity, how old were your kids in 2017 when you were having that conversation?
So 2017, so it'll be in 5 and 3. Yeah, so yeah, pretty
Okay, so
young.
still very young.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
still very young kids, and probably still very young today, of course.
yeah, and it was just I think it's a great age for having that time with them, because they still want to be around mum and dad, and they're
True.
like interested in growing up. So yeah, no, it was great timing for them.
Yeah, no, that's actually very true. So obviously, as you said, in your work and in your company, you are focusing on essentially spreading this financial education and knowledge to kids, even though it's through parents as well. Um, just out of curiosity, what led you to then take that path of focusing on teaching kids about money? Because I guess most people would have potentially looked at, okay, let's teach adults how to be financially free so that they can take time off with their kids. Whereas you are doing the same thing, but just from this slight different angle of, actually, let's also focus on spreading this knowledge down to your kids as well. So what led you to focus on that, essentially?
Yeah, so my main bit was to try and teach kids, but not directly, but kind of through the parents. And so what I kind of wanted to do, well, two reasons. One, as I say, I was doing this with my daughters, so I felt that. But also, I had a conversation with um, it was my sister actually, and she's got two boys, and she'd read or something or I'd talked to her about what I was doing with my two girls, and she said, "Oh, right, I want to do the same. How do I do it?" And so I just went and just told her what to do, blah blah blah. Then my parents said, "How did you get your sister to start saving? Like we've been trying to tell her and do that, and she just wouldn't. And you seem to have just managed to get her to do it." And I said, it's because I wasn't telling her to do it. I was telling her to do it for her kids and my sister. And I think my sister's a good representation in terms of most adults today are so caught up in, I've got to pay for my house, I've got to pay for the holidays, I'm going to get a new car or maintenance. Everyone's so busy with the here and now with their money, they can't think about the future, but they can see the future for their kids. And so they're much more likely to take kind of good actions about money for their kids. And then what happened is that when my sister set up an account for her kids, an investment account, she also set one up for herself at the same time, and then she sort of saw the benefits of it, and then she started to do, because it was just, people just need that catalyst to take an action, and actually doing the catalyst being about the kids is actually stronger than trying to do it for yourselves. So I think that little bit also thought, all right, if that worked for her, and I didn't mean to do that, I was just that's what happened, and I thought, oh, actually I think that's going to be probably quite prevalent in the same kind of situations for many parents. So it's kind of two generations in one that I'm trying to do when I'm talking to the parents. Most parents have never been taught about money, well, most adults have never been taught about money. So this is just a way of teaching parents about money themselves so they can be good role models for their kids, but also hopefully take some actions. And I love hearing the feedback from blogs on my book that says, oh, we read that. I know it was about kids, but it's made a big impact on what we're doing as well.
I absolutely love that
Yeah.
because you touched on a really good point, which is the fact that a lot of parents will always think about their children. So we're not parents yet, but our parents now are always talking about, oh my God, we're like a lot older. We need to start thinking about what will leave you guys when we're gone. And that's actually a good point because now they're like, okay, what can we set up? What can we put together? So you're right in saying that parents will always think about their children. And like you say, that was a great catalyst for your sister. So, in your opinion, why is it important for children to learn about money and what role do parents actually play in that?
Yeah, so there's actually been some really good research by Cambridge University that says they did a big study, and children learn many of their adult money behaviors by the age of 7. And so when I heard that, I was
Oh,
like, what? Really? I can't remember even thinking about money at the age of 7. But then you kind of
no.
think about it. When kids are just absorbing so much when they're growing up, and especially at that very young age. So if they're not even being spoke to about money, but they're seeing money being dealt around the house. So if they just see money's for spending, money's for spending, money's for spending, that just gets hardwired into their developing brains. And if people sort of say, when they get given birthday money or tooth fairy money or any kind of special occasion, and parents say to them, or any adult says to them, oh, what are you going to go and spend that money on? Again, they're just forming this money's for spending, money's for spending. And
Mm.
then as they get older, you've then got to try and rewire that brain to say, no, money's not just for spending. There's other things for it. And we know how hard it is to rewire once those actions are set. They're really hard to change. Not to say once they're 7, that's it, they're done for. A life of poverty awaits.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not that at all, but it just means it's just so much easier to talk and just get children to develop good habits from a fresh start and get them to, right, money's not just for spending, spending's fun, but also there's these other uses of money. Let's start doing some of those and embedding them. So when they get to adults, they're like, good with money, and that's just because that's what they've always done. There's no hard work about it. That's just good habits and behaviors. And the parent's role is to kind of guide them on what those habits should be, and also give them the opportunity to form those habits. So I talk a lot about pocket money or allowance, to say that's the framework in which children can make decisions regularly. Some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad, but they're going to make decisions, they're going to learn from them, and that's how they can form a habit. Whereas if they only get money at sort of sporadic points in time, they can get super excited about it, and then
Yeah.
they don't get very much money very often, and then someone says, now you've got to save that, and they're like, oh, you just ruined my fun. Whereas if they get money, a little bit of money, a little regularly, then saying just save a little bit of that isn't doesn't have that same kind of boring effect to it. It's just, oh, that's just a little bit, that's
Yeah.
fine, I've got loads more coming.
You know what? I think what you're saying, I didn't realize myself, but the more you spoke about the fact that we learn at least a big chunk of our money habits by the age of 7, it then reminded me of my upbringing. So I grew up in a Christian household, and and as part of our faith, it's a big part of it is giving money to church, essentially. And thinking about it now, I still give money to church today, but this is something that I feel like I've never heard to learn it, but that's probably because, coming back to what you
Yeah.
said, I grew up around that environment. So I've always just known that a part of my money I give to church. It's never been, I've never had to question it. I've never had to really think twice about it. It's just
Yeah,
so normal to me. But I then meet people who maybe didn't grow up in that environment, and to them that's such a strange phenomenon. And so I think that actually then made me realize that what you're saying is actually true. I've never
yeah,
thought of it from that perspective, but I did grow up in a household where my mom would, or pretty much everybody in my family, to be honest, would kind of really say, "Oh, here's some birthday money. Make sure you give some of it to church." Kind of situation. It's
yeah.
really powerful stuff when you think about it, and it's quite scary actually to say by the age of 7, your child would know, or at least would that whatever they've learned by that age, that would influence everything they do moving forward.
Yeah, no, I say it had a big shock to me when I heard about it, and clearly, like, people change and they can change. Just, yeah, just make it easy for them. That's why it's, if the younger
Yeah,
we can talk to kids about money, the better chance they're going to have of uh, forming those great habits.
exactly. Now, so for parents who are listening to this, uh, how should they even begin? Where do they start from to tackle this big phenomenon? Because as we were saying earlier on, right? It's we also as adults have a lot of unlearning to do and
Yeah.
relearning to do when it comes to money,
Yeah,
and it's already hard for us. So then, how, as the parent, would you then also then be in a position to say, okay, let me teach about my kids about money? Where do they even start from? And I think another question to add on is, what age is there such a thing as, okay, start from this age or at this stage of your child's upbringing?
yeah. So I'll go the second question first in terms of the age. Pretty much the younger the better. And it's almost some bits of it about money is about, I say, it's about behaviors and actions that even from the youngest age, they don't have to be anything about money, but teaching like 1 or 2 year old to be patient, not just let them have what they want when they want it, and just say,
Mm,
well, you can have that, but you have to just wait a little while, or get them to, and it doesn't have to be about money. It could be a chocolate bar or watching a cartoon. Just getting them to be a little bit patient is a habit. In terms of time talking to kids about money, I started talking with my youngest at 4 years old. And the way I did that, and I still use this analogy today, is to get kids to think of money like seeds, because it's fun and it makes it much more interesting than talking about real money. And so children can, you say to them, look, think of money like seeds. You can give those seeds away, and that's just like spending, and they'll get that. But they're already curious to say, why have you said seeds, and what does it mean when you plant it? And then you can start saying, well, the other use of money is that you can plant it, and you can think about these seeds. If you plant them, and they'll grow into these trees, and those trees will produce seeds, which you can plant. And then your goal is to have this kind of financial forest growing, and that's what you want. And that means that whenever you need something, you've got your forest there. And straight away, they're kind of curious about this analogy, and they can kind of see it, and they want to grow their forest. So my daughters, when we give them some pocket money, they'll say, daddy, I want to put some of this money towards our blue trees. So we call it blue trees, is this kind of money trees, and it's just virtual. And they'll say, "Oh, how many trees do I have? Daddy, can I put some trees? How many trees does my sister have?" They're a little bit, but they can see money into the future, and that's a really powerful mindset to have. And they know that trees don't grow straight away. So when I was telling my daughter this at 4 years old, she just bought into it. She didn't really question what does it mean when you actually plant the seed? How does money grow? But as they got older, they did. They started to ask, "Daddy, what is a blue tree?" But they still just knew that what they wanted to do with their money was to plant some of these seeds and grow these trees. They just bought into it, and they enjoyed it. And then as they got older, we started to sort of teach them about how do you make money grow. So it's not putting these seeds under the bed, it's about planting them. So it's about investing. And so we'd been investing some money for our kids from a very young age. So we talked to them about investing in a very simple way, and I'm more than happy to go through that story with you. But it was just a really fun analogy. And as we now I've got my book, which is Grandpa's Fortune Fables, which uses that analogy on heat. It's like so many different ways in which you can teach kids and cover so many money lessons. But the key piece is it's fun, it's easy, it's visual. Some parents who have read the book, they actually have started growing actual trees with their kids to sort of really play with it. And the key one, and so what I did then, and which I recommend for parents, is then to kind of convert that into what I call the 3 rules of wealth. And I use that analogy. So whenever kids get some money, the first rule is to make sure you keep 1 out of every 10 seeds that you receive. So if they get £10, keep 1 of those seeds. The second one is you don't just want to keep those seeds under the bed. So the second rule is you've got to plant that seed. And that's all about investing that seed. And then the third rule is if you want to grow a forest, it doesn't grow overnight. So you have to be patient. And I believe if children can follow those 3 rules with the help of their parents from the youngest age, I have no doubt they're going to grow up financially healthy and wealthy. Because as we know, very few people are saving any of their money. I think it's like 2/3 of adults are in debt, excluding their mortgages. So that means 2/3 of adults in the UK are not following that first rule. Hardly any people are investing because no one's taught about it, sadly. And we know in today's world that being patient is almost a crime. No one seems to want to be patient, and we need to change that. So yeah, teaching them about this forest growing, and that, right, if you want a forest, follow these 3 rules, and you'll be there. And it's, in my mind, kind of simple as that. That's how you can have financially healthy children over time. But again, it requires repetitive and help and good role modeling from the parents.
To be honest, even for me, that's a very good
Yeah,
analogy.
I was thinking that,
that's just not
that's
for
a great
kids.
way to put it, even
Yeah.
for adults. Like, forget children, but it's such an
Absolutely.
amazing way to put it for adults because it was so easy for me to understand what you just said and even start thinking in my head, oh, okay, that makes sense. Keep some of it and then invest some of it. But remember, it's not going to take a day to grow.
And we're growing a forest,
Yeah.
right? It's these terminologies. It's like, oh yeah, that's obviously clear. But take out that analogy and say to somebody, okay, spend less than you earn, invest some of that money, and be patient with your investments. Don't log in every week to see how much has grown. That doesn't sound as powerful as put 1 seed aside, plant it in the ground, and the aim is to build a forest. Do you know,
Yeah.
Exactly.
it's the same thing, but it's the reframing that makes it so powerful here, and I love that so much. It's just incredible, and I can see why
Yeah.
kids would understand that.
Yeah, and especially on talking about investing, it works so well because, as we know, when people start investing in the stock market, for example, they get very scared when there's like a market correction or a market fall. But then you kind of you say, well, you're growing these trees, and we know that there's storms, and storms break your trees, but you don't go around chopping down your trees after a storm. You just let it grow,
Wow.
and it always grows back bigger and stronger over time. And so I always say I want my children to see their forest go through these storms and realize that the best action is to do nothing, and know that give it enough time, the stock market will grow and recover from the storms. Even better, after a storm, the ground's nice and wet and fertile. Best time to to plant some more seeds.
Yeah. And even better, in the winter season, the leaves fall, but they will come back in the spring. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
you could go to town with this analogy. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you.
I love it so much. It's incredible. So touching on investing then, because I guess let's just say, at least I'm assuming here, it's easy to teach a child. If you get £10, put £1 aside. That's probably the easier part. Or spend this percentage, give that percentage, and then keep this percentage. That part is kind of the easy part. But then to understand the concept of investing, adults, even as adults, that concept is a hard
Yeah.
thing to really tackle or to really understand in full. And my personal opinion is that part of it is just because there's so much jargon and so much literature that just makes it sound harder than it actually is. Uh, but then now you're basically saying you're teaching investing to children. That sounds like a strange sentence in and of itself.
Yeah.
So how do you tackle this very complex topic already for adults? For someone who
Yeah.
is, your daughter you said was 4 or 5, for someone of that age to really grasp and understand that.
Yeah, so I'll just go through how I taught So my eldest was about 7 when she asked the question about the blue tree, and we happened to be in McDonald's in Hong Kong, and so it was fantastic because we invest in a global equity fund, so a Vanguard global index, and so it covers thousands of companies. So McDonald's was clearly one of those companies. So I said, "Oh, do you know that you own a piece of this McDonald's?" And she was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yep." And you see, she was like, "What, this tray?" And I'm like, "Yep." And the table and the bins, yep. And I was like, "And you see all those people over there queuing up to buy their burger? They're going to get a little bit poorer, but McDonald's is going to get that money and become a little bit richer. And you own a bit of McDonald's, so you're going to get a bit richer. And it's not just this McDonald's; it's all the McDonald's around the world. You're going to get a bit richer." And she got it straight away. She's like, "Well, I own it." I was like, "Yeah." Granted, I didn't go through just how small what percentage she owned, but she loved the fact that she owned that. And I was like, "Yep." And the money that we invest, when you plant those blue trees, you're giving some money to McDonald's, and McDonald's uses that money to create new hamburgers or open new restaurants, so that they can make more money. And the more money they make, the more money you make, and that's how your trees are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we walked around the shopping center, and there was the Apple store. So we said, "Yep, you own a piece of that." So all those people buying their iPads, you own some of that money. We lived in Hong Kong, so we could see Disneyland in the distance. Yep, we own a bit of Disney. So all those people on the boat going to Disney, they're going to go and give money to Disney, and that money is yours. And so straight away, she could get that concept that investing means owning, and when you own, you get that money that people are spending. So as long as people keep spending, and that money, when people do spend, goes to companies, and the key bit is companies are owned by people. The companies aren't just buildings, they're people, and those people are the investors. And so she can see that flow, and so yeah, so she's excited and wants to be part of investing. And yeah, again, using that tree analogy about storms and the fact that you don't just want one tree planted, so you don't want to just invest in one company, because you could be unlucky and that storm wipes out one of your one tree. You want to have lots of trees, because you never hear about all the trees being wiped out. And so yeah, she kind of really got it. And I think that even that basic bit is 99% of what you need to know about investing. I know there's so much more that you can talk about investing. You can use all the complexities about charts and dividends and PE ratios and all this scary stuff. You don't need to know that. Just need to make sure you are investing and you own some companies. And if those companies, if you have enough of them and people keep spending, that money will ultimately end up going to people who have invested. And that's her and her sister, as well as hopefully many, many other kids in the future.
Oh, that's
Wow.
amazing. I wish
Wow.
I'd been taught about investing like that,
Exactly.
because initially when I started learning about investing, I think I was like, what, 25?
Something like that. Yeah.
I'm 29 now, so I was about 25, and Tando tried to get me to invest. It'd be like, "Oh, you need to invest. It's really, really good. It's for our future and stuff like that." And it was just going over my head. But I think the reason why it was because of like all the jargon, and obviously, like a lot of people would then turn around and say, "Well, if you invest, you lose your money." So that's all I could remember, and that's all I'd go by. But it wasn't until he sat down with me and used the analogy of chocolates, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was only then that I was like, "Oh, actually, no, I understand now that yes, there is a risk, but I could also make money out of it." So that simple analogy that you've just explained, that's a really, really good one.
Yeah. And it's not surprising that yourself and pretty much all adults have that same view. I've always said that investing is like you have like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think it's the other way around. It's a sheep in wolf's clothing. It looks scary on the outside, but actually when you go into it, it's not. And you hit the news and headlines do not help. Like stock market's fallen by this amount, investors lose millions, or this company's gone out of business, investors lose millions. And so people are just, especially when adults start investing, they're investing with a, a decent amount of money. So when they see it go down, it's painful. Whereas when children can do it, they don't really care. They're just like, some money's gone,
Yeah.
and they're not sort of tracking it as closely. And so,
Yeah.
but they still can see it. And so by the time they do get to adults, they've seen the stock market go up and down, but ultimately grow. And it's about that mindset. As long as they don't chop the trees down when there's a storm, they're gonna be fine, and they would have had that experience. Whereas most people start investing, they go, it's scary, and then the storm inevitably happens straight after they've started investing, and they go, nope, it's not for me. um, I'm walking away, and it doesn't have to be that way. And it's yeah, we have to just try and simplify it as much as possible. And again, if kids can understand it, then I'm 100% sure adults can.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's beauty in simplification, because even for adults, it then cuts out the I guess the noise, should I
Yes.
say, which, as you said, most people won't really need to know all these other things that are around investing, like P ratios and a bit bar and all these other terminologies that are surrounded around investing. Because for the average investor who particularly is investing in the index fund, like you mentioned, which is a Vanguard Global Index Tracker, then that they don't need to know all these other nuances. They just need to know that I'm planting my seeds to build my forest, and because it's an index, each money that's going in that index fund is buying a bunch of different, I guess, part of different trees, should I say, rather than one single tree. And I just need to be patient. And that's literally like the end of that conversation, or at least as much as, or as little, should I say, as the person needs to know. Fair enough, you could learn more, but you've got that basic understanding there. But so investing is obviously one side of money, isn't it? Are there any other aspects of money that you think parents should focus on when teaching their kids about money?
Yeah, so I think that yeah, the three rules of wealth that I've mentioned before. So saving, getting in the habit of saving 1 out of every 10, investing and being patient. The other one, which I think is a really important topic, and I do again cover it in, it's been one of my most popular blogs, is kind of rich kids versus wealthy kids. So it's this concept of rich versus wealthy, and I think this is
Okay.
so important because it's about the mindset. And we live in this world where rich, which is kind of having money and spending money, is so prevalent, and you see it everywhere. Compared to when I was younger, you were younger, it's so much more now because we don't just compare ourselves to our friends who are in the same social economics
Yeah.
kind of grouping. We compare ourselves to the world, and our kids are seeing, and not just um, but even when we saw our friends, there wouldn't be that much change. But now we're seeing everyone on social media, and every time we go onto social media, and we're on social media a lot, and you're seeing all these different cases of people spending money and making us feel like, oh, I wish I had that much money to spend what
Yeah.
they're spending. So you get to see this, and that's called rich. But actually, what they don't see is the other side. Is this wealthy? This the people who do spend, but they also keep a little bit, and they look after their money, and they have the security that if things go bad, that they've got that money there. They think about the future and save some money for that. We don't see that. That's not very easy to show on social media. And so it's so important that we do let our kids know that there are these two different types of people out there. You're only seeing one, but there is this other one. And actually, once they know about being wealthy, having that security, but also thinking about what your life's going to be in the future, most people want to be wealthy, but they're
Yeah.
just never going to learn it through osmosis. They have to be kind of taught. And that's one of the bits in the book. I've got the two characters. You've got Richie Raccoon, who's the found gold, spends it all, but then he kind of loses some of that money. He can't find any more gold and he's spent it all. And then you've got Grandpa, who's kind of built his forest and has a lovely life in his hammock and all the fruits and stuff he can lives um, off his forest. And when children read the book and they kind of then see the two characters side by side, they all want to be like Grandpa, who's the wealthy. But I say it's such an important topic because if children don't get taught about wealthy, then inevitably they kind of want to be rich.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah,
Wow.
which is powerful. That's a powerful lesson, to be honest. Again, even for adults, but even more powerful for kids because when we are younger, I think comparison is probably one of the biggest things that
Yeah.
kids do with society. Just I don't look like this person, I don't dress like this person, I don't have what they have, and I've got I don't know 3 pairs of trainers, they've got 30. That kind of small comparison at
Yeah.
that stage, but it starts from there, doesn't it? And it ends up growing into, oh, we live in this area, but they live in that area. And it's just, when you're an adult, you're basically doing the same thing, just at a far different level. So that's definitely a very powerful lesson. So all the stuff, I guess, that we've been talking about now, obviously, it has been about the seeds and the blue trees and the planting or building forests for yourselves. And these are kind of things that are really, really strong on the mindset stuff, as you've mentioned, and the rich versus the wealthy. From a practical level, what kind of things could parents start to do with their kids to then embed these concepts into like tangible actions?
Yeah. So the most powerful one is if you can afford to do so, is to give a little bit of pocket money each week um, to your children. It really doesn't matter about how much it is, as long as they can afford to buy something. so, but the key point is that then they've got this forum to be able to make decisions and start taking and follow that initially that first rule of wealth of right, here's a pound. Okay, let's make sure you save that 10p. You still got 90p, so the difference between 10p a pound and 90p is not massive. It's not going to change your whole level of happiness. But that 10p, and if they after it doesn't take that long before they've got quite a number of 10p's saved up, then they can start, okay, what do we want to do with that amount of money? Okay, then the adult parents can start thinking about investing. And there's lots of resources out there, but including on my website about how to help parents set up an investment account. But that is that first bit that's so important. It's just giving the kids a little bit of money and then encouraging them to save that 10% and starting to grow that forest. It's such a small action, but it's so important. And that's the thing about some things about money. People think it should be complicated, and actually, it's not. It's about doing the simple things consistently. Is how people become very good with money and become very financially healthy. It's not about they've had this, they're super clever and they come up with this really great idea and now they're really wealthy. They can do in terms of starting a business, and that's about earning money, not about managing money. Very rarely do you get someone who comes across with a massive idea and can invest and make loads and loads of money. It's not. It's all about small actions, but
Yeah.
consistency. And that's what we need all parents to be doing. And I believe, regardless of how much parents earn, how knowledgeable they are on money, how good their numbers, every single parent can help their children form that very simple habit. And I say 2/3 of adults in the UK today aren't following that rule. And so
Yeah.
they're giving their children a huge advantage over so many people.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that number is going to come down over time.
Mm.
I'm a bit afraid that it's going to go up given the contactless society and social media and how easy it is now to spend. I fear that it's going to go up, but hopefully, parents will read my blogs and listen to this podcast, and that will change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Like consistency is so important. Like even in anything in life that you want to do, if you're consistent at it, you will actually reap the results of it. And it's a beautiful thing to continue doing. Just keep being consistent, even if it's small steps as well. Like small steps, you keep taking them, and keep being consistent. You will definitely see the results of that. So we've heard this statement quite a lot, even when we were growing up. We'd hear a lot of people saying, well, money doesn't grow on trees, or money is hard to get. And some people have grown up in an environment where money was not even spoken about in the household. Are there any money statements that you and your wife have consciously decided not to say around your children?
Yeah. So we try and be as positive as possible about money, even if it's something. So we talk about. I clearly talk to my kids about money, about all different topics. But even when we do, we try and put a positive spin on it. Um, so and you can understand why the kind of statements of money doesn't grow on trees, but we need to change that. We need as many parents to change that. Say, we're not spending that money because we have this reason for it. It might be we just don't think it's good value. We would rather spend our money somewhere else. And so it's not, we don't have that money, so don't ask me for that money. It's more, we don't want to spend our money on that because of we want to do something else with it. And that's a positive spin on it. And the other bit is you mentioned about parents not even speaking about money. And that's again a negative, and kids will pick up on that. Like kids, when we don't swear in front of our kids, it's almost the lack of swearing means that they know it's a bad thing. They know swearing exists, but they know my wife and I don't swear in front of them, and they know that's because and it's almost like the fact that we don't swear means it's a bad thing. Oh, right, they don't talk about money. That must mean it's a bad thing because they know about money, but if they don't hear, and then again, that just means that if they grow up with a sort of a negative mindset about money, that means when they're older, they're not going to take the time to try and learn about money. They're not going to try and see it as something that they want to do their time. And yeah, they might see people who do have money as bad people, and that's definitely not the case. And the worst one is that if they don't think about money, they might not seek help when they need help about money. They'll just say, it's too stressful, it's a bad thing, I just don't want to talk about it. So just leave me alone. And then it'll just compound in terms of the downside. So I always recommend that even if there's a topic, just try and put a positive spin. Oh, we can't afford that yet, but let's think about ways in which we might be able to in the future. Or actually, what would you rather spend your money on if you had all the money in the world? What kind of things do you think we should spend and make a good impact on? And again, the point you mentioned about giving money to church, and that's we'd rather give some more money to the church because that's going to have a big impact on the community that we care about, rather than a new pair of trainers or wherever it is. And it's that showing those values uh, is much stronger than just saying, no, you can't have that, because then that's a negative.
Powerful, powerful stuff. And there's going to be the, a slight red herring here. There might be people who would listen to this, or even come across yourself and say, what you're doing is beautiful, it's great. I can understand. That's great. It's working for you. But in my personal opinion, I just think teaching kids about money is just too early. It's too soon, right? Kids should be kids. Why are we, I guess, bothering teaching kids about money? What are your thoughts on somebody who has that perspective?
Yeah, there are lots of people like that, and that's going to be generally based on their own negative. So say that they're in financial stress, so thinking about money makes them stressed, and therefore I don't want to put that stress on my kids. But I think they've got to be a change of that mindset. And so when I try and talk to them, I just say, well, look, if you're stressed about it, your kids are going to pick up on that. That's going to mean that they're going to be stressed about money. And if you're stressed about money, that really confines your ability to change that future. So there's never too early and it's never too late to learn about money, even if it's for yourself first, and taking small actions to open up and then try and give your kids a positive mindset. And then I just say, kids are so curious about money. I've done a few where I go into schools and, or virtually, because I'm on the other side of the world, um, but go to schools and I speak for about 10 minutes and then 50 minutes is just bombarded with questions. Like they're just so curious about money. If they get a forum to ask questions and they like it. Which professions make the most money? How did money get started? I saw a homeless person. Why are they homeless? And they're really curious about all these different questions. So we shouldn't be like, don't talk about that. Don't ask those questions. That's when you're an adult. We need our kids to be prepared for the realities of being financially independent, and that's sadly most of us adults kind of learn as we find out. And pretty much everyone says, "I wish I had learned about money when I was younger." And so let's make sure that we do help every adult. And if the parents are saying they don't want to teach their kids, that's probably more a reflection on their own situation. And therefore, hopefully, we can help guide them to help see that there are steps that they can take to get more comfortable with money, and then start having that important conversation with their kids.
Yeah, 100%. And no, this is really beautiful stuff, to be honest. And I agree with that notion. Let's get the conversation going with young kids and with adults and with parents and with siblings and basically your family members. Just let's start opening the conversation, because it's only going to help at the end of the day,
Yeah.
isn't it? Now, before we come to a close, just because you got a company, right, Blue Tree Savings, and you also mentioned that you have a book and you do some talks. So just tell us really about what Blue Tree Savings is and what you offer and how you help people with this whole topic of teaching kids about money.
Yeah, so I've got my website, bluetreesavings.com, and I release a blog every week, which is a different money topic to help parents teach their kids about money. So pretty much any topic now is pretty much covered. In fact, the website got voted the best family finances blog of 2021 by
Oh,
UK bloggers, which is
congratulations.
very nice. But on the website, there's also, if you want to see the content in like video form, I've got an online course, which is like 20-minute videos. This goes through what I see is the kind of key topics from my blogs. And that's mostly for parents, but even some parents have got their kids to watch it with them, and they've enjoyed that. It's got a link to some resources, but yeah, also it's got lots of detail about my book. So for the people on the video, Grandpa's Fortune Fables, so that you can kind of learn about what it covers in there and download the first 2 chapters. The book is for kids, but I really encourage a lot of parents to read it with their kids. And I say it covers a lot of topics that most parents go, "Oh, I've learned something new myself from that." So I'm going to continue to do that, write blogs every week, to try and reinforce some of those messages. Again, a lot of it's about actions, some of it's about knowledge, some of it's kind of just stuff that I find interesting. So, like, how does McDonald's actually make money, or how does Starbucks actually make money? And to sort of encourage that there's some really clever ways of companies are operating. And again, I love sort of sharing those kind of real world stuff with my kids, because again, it's trying to get that balance between using the stories that I use, like little stories in a lot of my blogs, but trying to put also some real world stuff in there as well to sort of balance it out. So yeah, so that's Blue Tree Savings.
Love it. No, I absolutely love everything that you're doing, Will, and everything you're doing
Yeah.
at Blue Tree Savings. It is incredible. This conversation has been really insightful. It kind of, for me, and this is just probably just me thinking in my head, it kind of just gives me this impression that you've taken, say, the richest man in Babylon, and that kind of story feel to it, and infused it with J.L. Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth style, because that book, The Simple Path to Wealth, was a father writing a book to his daughter who didn't want to learn about money, which is a very interesting perspective. So he took a similar thing that you did about simplifying, like, okay, this is what you just need to know, full stop. Don't worry about anything else. This is the simple path to build wealth, and this is the laziest way to do it because you don't want to learn about money. That's how that movement started, and I think what you're doing is also super powerful in its own right, because it's, in my mind, is touching multiple generations. You're helping children, I guess, initially, but equally speaking, in the same time, the parents are being helped as well. And next thing you know, it's them becoming a family thing, rather than being very isolated to being just about the child or just about
Yeah.
the adult in the house. It's actually saying, actually, everybody in this family is involved in this
Yeah.
concept of building blue trees together, sort of thing. And I
Yes.
completely love that. So thank you so much for sharing what you're doing with us.
Oh, no worries. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for taking the time to have me on the show and talking about this topic. It's not top of mind for many families, so I'm hoping that your listeners will hopefully spark a conversation with their kids if they've got kids.
Yeah, definitely. So if people do want to reach out to you personally, what's the best place?
So two places. One is direct email. So will@bluetreesavings.com is I'm happy. I love hearing questions or people sharing their own sort of stories, what they're doing with their kids or what they learn about money as they are growing up. So please. And I'm on most predominantly on LinkedIn. So just Will Rainey on LinkedIn. You'll see it will have kids and money in my profile piece. So I try and post on there quite regularly. I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under Blue Tree Savings or Grandpa's Fortune Fables. But yeah, I'm not as visible on them as I probably should be.
No problem. No, thank you so much, Will. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and definitely, it's been such an interesting and such an eye-opening conversation for us, which I'm sure many people will find valuable.
Thank you.